Good morning, everyone. Yesterday was Lag BaOmer, which celebrates the life of Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai. In Ethics of Our Fathers, Pirkei Avot, we have a beautiful teaching from Rabbi Shimon, where he says there are three crowns that a person could aspire to wear during their lifetime. There's the crown of Torah knowledge, there's the crown of priesthood, kuhuna, and there's the crown of kingship, rulership, leadership. However, he says the crown of a good name, Ola al Gabeim, is above them all, surpasses them all. And simply what Rabbi Shimon is teaching us is that as great as it is to wear the crown of Torah, the crown of priesthood, the crown of kingship, the greatest crown a person should and can aspire to is the crown of a good name, having a good reputation. But the Lubavitcher Rebbe makes a very fine observation, and he says that it doesn't say in Hebrew the crown of a good name rises aleihem, above them, but al gabehem, upon them. The difference is that if it would have said above them, it would mean that the crown of a good name is the most important crown, the greatest crown of all. But actually what the Mishnah is teaching us is that the crown of a good name must rise upon them, meaning that when a person studies Torah, he shouldn't just say, it's enough that I study Torah. You have to make sure you're studying Torah in a way that you carry a good name, that your Torah makes you a better person, that you treat people with more love and more kindness, and people say good things about you because your Torah bestows upon you the crown of a good name. And if you're a Kohen, and every Jew is a Kohen, we are called a nation of Kohanim, meaning that you're devoted to priesthood, to serving God, you must do it in a way that you have a good name. And finally, if you're a leader, you must make sure, of course, that you carry the crown of a Shem Tov, a good name. Because Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, whose yahrzeit we celebrated yesterday, teaches us that whatever we do, we have to do it in a way that we are beloved by others, that we are respected by others, that people say, this is a man, this is a woman, this is a person who is engaged in Torah study or in the service of God or in leadership, but they do it with kindness and generosity and sensitivity, and therefore they earn the most important crown that complements and comes in conjunction with their Torah, priesthood, and kingship, the crown of a good name, a good reputation. It's a story told about a Ger Chassid who was doing business in New Zealand with wool and manufacturing back in the 50s. And came to the Lubavitcher Rebbe. He happened to be in New York. He had an audience with the Rebbe. He told the Rebbe what he was doing. And the Rebbe asked him if there's a mikveh in New Zealand. And he said no. And the Rebbe said, wherever a Jew is, if business led you to New Zealand, you have a purpose there, and you should build a proper mikveh. 40 years later, he was back in New York, and he went by the Rebbe to get $1 and a blessing. And when the Rebbe handed him $1, the Rebbe looked at him, and the Rebbe said, is there a mikveh in New Zealand? He was absolutely floored, shocked. He didn't introduce himself, that the Rebbe remembered 40 years later, and unfortunately he responded that not that he's aware of, there's still no mikveh. When he came back to Israel, he went to his Rebbe, the Pnei Menachem, the Ger Rebbe, and he said, I can't believe what happened. I went by the Rebbe 40 years later, and he remembered my conversation. Amazing. How did he do that? And the Ger Rebbe told his follower, I'm not impressed. I'm not surprised that the Rebbe knew who you were. Because a tzaddik, a righteous person, doesn't look at your body. He looks at your soul. And the minute he saw your soul, he knew you had a mission to build a mikveh in New Zealand. He said, what I'm most inspired by, impressed, was that 40 years later, the Rebbe was still worried about the Jews in New Zealand if they have a proper mikveh. That's what it means to carry the crown of a good name, to not only study Torah and serve God and be a leader for your own self-motivation and purposes and interests and benefits, but you always think about others and care about others. And when you care about others in a genuine, compassionate, loving way, then you will earn the crown of a good name. And then the Torah and the priesthood and the leadership, kingship will all be elevated through the good name. Have a wonderful, beautiful, good Shabbos.